Yo, what up? It's Matt from Louda Created. This is my 620 70, what is it, 75 Datsun 620. After posting some stuff on my Instagram page for my business, a lot of people said that I should try and do some YouTubing for this build. So I'm going to give it a crack. And see how I get on. So maybe first things first, I'll show you around my workshop. Work here by myself, for myself, doing car fab. So this is a 57 Oldsmobile, just airbagged, waiting for the customer to come pick it up. It's a very cool old bit of kit. I've got this GMC truck that I've done a fair amount of work on in the past, wheels and suspension and bits and pieces. I've 4-linked it. Put coilovers and stuff in the back. So I've just last week ripped the 327 out of it, and he's got a Commodore LS3 rebuilt, reconditioned with a cam and some valve springs to go on that. So we're going to do that in the coming weeks. And right at the minute I'm working on Zarek's 1J S13, which is a very cool car, a lot of shiny bits. So I've just done all the intercooler piping, mounted the intercooler radiator, made the little catch can just today, did some inner guards, Wiggins radiator pipes, all the fruit. So I've got dump pipe left to do and a few other bits and pieces in the engine bay and some bash bars and fit up the front bumper and guards. But yeah, so that's cool. It's nice to be working on shiny stuff. So it's a joy to work on. I much prefer doing that than working on these American things, but that's okay. It's all work, pays the bills. Lets me maybe piss around with this at some stage. So this, I've had this for wee while now, sitting in a container out the back of this workshop, and I hadn't really had much of a plan for it. I had one of these real mint road car when I was like 19, 20, and when I was just sort of getting into modifying stuff, but it was too tidy to sort of chop up, so I ended up selling it to, I don't know, do what, build a drift car or something. And I've always regretted selling it. So this popped up just not far from home for sale. So I jumped at that a wee while ago. Old fella had it. He had been driving it for years, but it just started failing warrants on rust. So there was some rust here, but I've chopped it out. He gave up on it and sold it off, so it's quite rusty along the seam with the firewall. So I got it, and it's, like I say, it's just been sitting around. Wasn't too sure what I was going to do with it, but I've come up with a plan, and it's going to be quite different, but I think it will be cool. Another thing is that just recently, in the past sort of 4 or 5 months, I got myself a plasma cutting table and have been slowly learning a bit of CAD, Fusion 360, and drawing parts and cutting them. So I really want to push myself with this to get good at using that. So I will do as much of this as I can on my computer and cut a lot of parts, hopefully. That's the plan. So first things first is, obviously those wheels are quite weird for this. I really want to use this thing as much as possible, not off-roading, but I go a lot of weird places, mountain biking and motorbiking, and I have other road cars and I can't use them. I can't take them down gravel roads, I can't put my bikes on the back. So this is going to be the plan with this. I'm going to airbag it so I can lift it up. Big wheels, it's pumped, you can tell that it's pumped out a long way. from the original body line. I'll get to that soon as to what's going on there. But yeah, it's a flat deck. Unfortunately, the well sides are real hard to come by in New Zealand. They're all either wrecked or rusty or whatever, so I'm going to probably just leave it flat deck. For now, I want to build some pretty funky frame stuff for it. Still want to be able to use it on the weekends, so I'll probably put a rack over the roof so I can go and pick up timber, bits and pieces like that. So yeah, should look pretty good anyway. And then as for the engine, I decided to go with a Rotary. Never had one, never really had much to do with them. I've always thought they're pretty cool, but every car that I've had, I've either wanted to be powerful or reliable, so one of these has not been the ticket for that. But this thing, I just want to putt around on the street, and I want it to be a bit of a showpiece and noisy, and that's what these things are, and people like them. So managed to pick this up locally, cheap-ish. Was running in a car, so hopefully it will go okay and last somewhat. So it's a 12A Bridgeport carved, obviously Series 1 5-speed gearbox, and I've just ordered electronic disease, a manifold and IDA for it. I'll probably put an electric water pump on it and mount the alternator on the side and do some Gilmores. So that's the plan with that. And then as for the ute itself, you can see that I've already been in here with a grinder. The original front end is just garbage anyway. It's just got drum brakes and it's a weird, horrible setup. So I sort of did a bit of searching around and found that I quite liked the layout of this Mazda Bounty. There's about a 2000 model Mazda Bounty. So I found a guy with a chassis close by, picked that up for $200, chopped the front end off the chassis and scrapped the rest of the ute. So the idea is to build as much of this as possible, but I still needed at least some hubs and stubs and brakes or something to start with. So I think this is going to work out alright. So the plan is to remake the top and bottom arms anyway. I also quite like this, that the ball joints bolt to the arms, so that'll be quite easy to make the arms. I won't have to put spherical joints or anything in the arms. I can just make them so the ball joints just bolt back to the arms, so that's cool. Also, this is a whole lot wider, hence why the wheels are poking out so far. What I've done here just to mock this in is I've literally just cut the inside edge out of the chassis rails on both sides and offered that up from underneath, just to sit it in there, tacked it in a couple places, and it technically is sweet. Half the reason I've done that is I wanted my road legal certifier to check it. Well, I wanted him to have a look at it and have a think of what he would approve or not with this. So he looked at it and said technically I could box that in, plate it up, and I could run that front end in there as it is. But with what I want to do with the suspension, he said I will have to do a design approval for other bits on the truck anyway, so I might as well do this better and do a design approval for this as well. So I will end up just getting rid of all that factory stuff and making my own brackets off the chassis rails to pick up the suspension points, so then it can all look nice and be signed off road legal. And then as for the rear, it's a bit of a mess back here, but I've actually got the diff not out of the same ute but out of a Bounty as well. So I've just tacked that to the chassis rail, and the chassis rails obviously need notching a heap to get it lower, but it's a good start because it's the same width as the front. So that's cool. This is pretty tidy, this old ute, apart from the rust, and it's still it's still got its registration on hold, so that makes it easy. Yeah, so now what I want to do is bang the motor in there and then see how much room I've got left in the front. So the plan with the suspension is to do a rocker airbag, like airbag over shock coil, like a coil over but converted to airbag, air spring, and I want to have them laying down in front of the engine, which is another reason why I really wanted to go for the Rotary, so I can have heaps of room in the engine bay. So I might end up cutting the firewall a bit. I mean, it's stuffed anyway, so I might actually cut all that and just make a nice panel with a bit of a recess. So, well, it doesn't really need a recess because the engine's only as big as the barrel housing anyway, but so I can get the motor back and hopefully get some struts sitting on an angle in front of the motor, which will look pretty sweet. Possibly do the radiator in behind the cab, but if I can get one to fit there, then probably nicer just leave it in the front. So I'm going to bang this in and we'll see how we're looking. Right, so that's that sitting in there. Had a customer turn up as I was trying to do that, but that's alright. Yeah, so that fits in there sweet. It's pretty good. Had a bit of a fight with the crossmember in the chassis. Not even the gearbox crossmember, there's another crossmember further back that is the gearbox had to pull up to sit on top of that, so that's alright. Managed to get it in there. It's probably sitting a bit low, I would say, for how low I want the truck to go. But there's no stress about cutting that tunnel a bit bigger. It's actually pretty far back. I don't know if I'd probably go much further back than that. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm probably going to have to... Oh, there's a panel inside. This was column shift, but there's that. I don't know whether they actually came out. Floor shift or not, but if I pull that off, see where the shifter hole is. If too far back, I might have to make a little linkage to get that sitting in the right spot. But yeah, cool. Fits good. It's exactly what I intended. That it leaves plenty of room around it. So so this is what I've got here. So these are TSD coilovers, just a standard coilover. I run TSD suspension a lot of my stuff. Steve is a good man and sorts me out with a lot of bits and pieces, and I do some work on his cars for him, so it's good. So I went and talked to him the other day. These are obviously his conventional coilovers, but can convert these to air spring. So they just have some seals that sit on this surface and an O-ring setup that goes on the top of the shaft, so we can put an air spring on there, and I can use these, so that's awesome. So these are MX5. I got these because they're relatively short and eyelet at the bottom, front and rear, so that makes them easy to mount. This top hat isn't too bad. This one, I don't know why it's like this, but it's pretty weird. The shaft is really long, so I'll make up a new top hat for that. Don't know which way round I'll run them, whether I run the long ones at the back or the front. Haven't decided yet, but that's the joy of running the rocker suspension that I want to run, is that I can have a lot more movement at the wheel than what I can have at the shock. So if I make the ratio of the rocker not 1 to 1, we can have more travel than the, say, 100mm or whatever it is that these shocks have, which is another reason I want to do it, because I probably want more than 100mm travel, because I want to be able to jack this thing up and sort of make it look like a sort of Dakar looking off-road truck, but also want it to be pretty much sitting on the ground. I'm guessing that the flares that I do on the guards are going to be almost to the height of the bonnet to be able to get it low enough with these big dog wheels on there and these tyres. So a little bit of info about these are 18 by 9, sorry. And half the reason I went with these exactly is because trying to find a low profile 18-inch tyre, well, any low profile all-terrain tyre was quite hard. Other than a 20, you can get low profile 20s, but 20s are just going to be way too big on this, so managed to find these tyres, which then made me choose these wheels, because there wasn't a heap of options in 18s. There's a lot of options in 20s, but not 18s, so this is what we got. I'm actually real stoked with them. I reckon they look sweet. I was a little bit worried when I first put them on here, because with this original front end in it and the original diff, they were pretty much flush with the guards, like they were pretty much good to go, and I was like, oh, I needed more offset. I think these are 15p or 12p, but obviously now that I've put the different diff and front end in it, it's pumped the track out by 150mm, I think, so it's like 75mm a side. So yeah, that's good. It's wide. I wanted it to be wide. I wanted to put big guards on it, so that is going to be good. So the idea with these will be probably that way around and mounted somewhat in here, I'm guessing, with a whoops, and then they'll have a mount and then a rocker and then a push rod down to the bottom arm, probably through the middle of this hole. I'll cut that. That's the original shock mount. All that'll go. I mean, all of it will go anyway. I'll just make up some mounts off the top of the chassis rail to pick up the top arm bolt, and then I'll make a cross member and to pick up the lower inner. This also has a caster arm in this setup, so I've just ditched completely thrown away the old caster arm, but I will make up some caster arms that come. This had original caster arms anyway, but I'll get rid of those and make up some caster arms and some new brackets. So yeah, that'll be good. It will be good. So as I started talking about the cert process, obviously this is relatively common in New Zealand. They have regulations and bits and pieces about this. You can do it. It's relatively straightforward, but they don't have anything about doing a rocker or cantilever suspension, so I'm going to have to do what they call a design approval for that. So the idea is to draw everything up. Now that I have a computer program, I can do the drawings. I'll draw everything up, fill out, there's like a 30-page form or something you need to fill out that goes through all of what components you're using: brakes, hubs, stubs, wheels, tyres, engine, gearbox, blah 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 blah. It has all this crap, and then also about what material you're using when you're building stuff, bits and pieces like that. So I'll go through that. I'll probably try and document that a bit. I think it's probably not very well documented and probably puts a lot of people off trying to do stuff like this, in New Zealand especially. So it'd probably be quite cool to sort of go through that process and give people a bit of an idea of what's involved. So hopefully they can build something wild and have it on the road, which is the dream really. It's cool to have stuff like the Sylvia, but it's also cool to have stuff like that you can actually drive down the road. So why not have both? I've done a fair bit of sort of big modifications on drift type cars, but they all have roll cages in them, so there's a lot of regulation changes, however you want to put it, around what you're allowed to do if it's a motorsport car. So as soon as it has a roll cage in it, it has an authority card, and there's a lot of other things you can get away with, but this is not going to have a roll cage in it, so some of those rules don't apply. So yeah, I think most people, when they're YouTubing, do this selfie mode. I don't know if I really like this, but that's alright. We'll get there, maybe, or I'll probably just put this footage on my computer and never touch it again. I don't know. See what happens. So as for now, I want to take some photos of, probably not going to bother drawing the chassis underneath the cab. There's no point, I'm not really going to change any of it. The chassis itself is actually pretty reasonable looking chassis. There's nothing ugly about it, it's not rusty, there's nothing wrong with it, so I'll probably just leave that. I'll draw up this front section and the rear section, because I'm going to notch the rear. Also want to do, which I have already played around and done some drawing, but I didn't do it to scale of the ute, so I need to redraw that to suit the width and the shape and dimensions and stuff of the chassis rails. So the plan with the rear is, hang on a second, I'll just grab a shot. Say, I'm thinking that I'll probably use the longer ones. I don't know if I'll use the longer ones in the front or the rear, but the plan is to forelink this, obviously notch the chassis, and then do a rocker again. I'm thinking I'll do the rocker kind of this way and have the shocks sitting something like that. I don't know if they'll be on top of the chassis, or could possibly fit them outside the chassis, which would kind of look cool. You'd be able to see it all from the side, but I need to draw that up and see what's going to work. So I'll probably just draw the back section of the chassis and the front section of the chassis. Another thing is that I will probably have to what you call C-notch the front of the chassis up, because with it as low as I want it, those arms are on a horrific angle, and I think the steering arm won't fit under the chassis rails, so I'll probably notch the chassis rails up in the front as well. So I'll draw that so I can cut all the plates and bits and pieces. I also want to, I've made plenty of tubular suspension arms. I've never done any out of technically plate. A lot of the Americans and stuff that I see, half my Instagram feed now is like trophy trucks and stuff, beach buggies and things. They all manufactured their arms out of plate and weld them all together, so I kind of want to do that with this, just so I can draw them and use my machine. I mean, it's pretty straightforward to just bend up some chromoly tube and weld some rose joint spigots to the end of them and job done, but that's not really the point of this build, so I'm going to try and do that. Another thing is they will need design approval as well. Anything steering or suspension components needs to be crack tested and TIG welded, so do all that and hopefully that can all get put through no problem as well. As for the front end, I don't know if there's much else really. Probably won't obviously have a sway bar. Obviously this had a steering box factory, which isn't bad, but the column is quite ugly and it's bulky and it's right kind of where I want to put the shocks. So I'm probably going to put a rack in this, but I just don't know what rack yet. Possibly an MX-5 manual rack if I can find one. I've fitted them to a few cars, or an old school like Escort, or no, it can't be Corolla because Corolla is behind the axle where it needs to be in front of the axle. So I think something along those lines anyway, Escort or MX-5 or something that I can find that's the right width and going to be in the right place for me to fit a nice column through there, which will look a lot better than the steering box. Yeah, so good. I'm going to take some pictures, I'm going to do some drawings, and I will keep you updated. Cheers.